I'm John Weideman, radio play-by-play voice of the Blackhawks on 720 WGN. Now, this morning, the boys are going to come out on this ice surface behind me and go through their rigors of the morning skate as they usually do in preparation for game number 2 of the Stanley Cup Final series with the Boston Bruins. The Blackhawks have a 1-0 lead on the Bruins, courtesy of their scintillating triple overtime win over Boston on the Andrew Shaw triple overtime goal. The United Center was just up for grabs. Everybody had fun and went home happy, but Game 2 is coming up. Now, on our show today, Troy Murray and I are going to preview tonight's game number 2, which should be exciting, along with a special guest, Bob Beers. He's the radio color analyst for the Boston Bruins on their radio station, The Hub. So stick around. We're going to take your Twitter questions. We're going to talk about tonight's game and plenty more. Have another cup of coffee and stand by for Morning Skate Live. Good morning. There you see the Blackhawks going through their paces of the morning skate here at the United Center, the morning of game number 2 of the Stanley Cup Finals. John Weideman along with Troy Murray, the radio voices of the Chicago Blackhawks on 720 WGN. Good morning, Troy, and welcome back. And, you know, game number 1, they're still talking about it all over the hockey world. A triple overtime victory for the Blackhawks. And truthfully, either side could have won that game a number of times. The Boston Bruins, Troy, had some excellent chances in that first overtime. And all the Blackhawk fans inside the building and really around the world holding their breath until it didn't happen. And fortunately for the Blackhawks, it did in triple overtime. Andrew Shaw's game-winning goal, it was kind of an accidental deflection, but it ended up in the back of the Bruin net, and the Hawks have a 1-0 lead. It's an exciting night.
It was such an emotional game in so many ways. I mean, so many times the Boston Bruins looked like they had an opportunity to win the game. Corey Crawford and the defense, the guys around him, came up with the plays that they needed to do to keep the puck out of the net. And you looked at the players, they were absolutely exhausted. The execution by the time that third overtime was taking place, just not where it was at the beginning of the game. That was obvious. But the Blackhawks were the team that found a way to get a puck past Tuukka Rask. Both goaltenders phenomenal in that game. And both teams at times, I thought, had great opportunities to win the game in different situations. Just one of the classic games that you'll ever see here at the United Center.
You know, I know you mentioned it during the second overtime, I guess is what it was, Troy. I remember you mentioning it. It was just such a marathon game, but I do remember you mentioning that the pace of that game in overtime had kind of slowed down a little bit to the point where it wasn't a normal playoff pace, and it was understandable. I mean, the guys had sweated so much, they had exhausted themselves so much, and they were kind of running on empty tanks, but it was still good hockey nonetheless.
Oh, it was great hockey. The funny thing was you watch the body language of the players after the whistle. They worked as hard as they could. Whatever they had left in the tank, they were giving it. Both teams, I mean, you just got to hand it to the guys. I mean, everybody on the ice was working as hard as they could. Whatever they had left, they were throwing it out there. But as soon as the whistle blew in the third overtime period, the players just stopped. Okay, it's done. We're not going to expend any more energy after the whistle. And I mean, these two teams basically played 2 full games at playoff intensity. It was incredible to watch. And for the Blackhawks, they're the team that feels maybe a little bit fresher coming out of that game just because they were the team that won it, but certainly a very, very evenly matched hockey game.
I go to the goaltenders. You mentioned Tuukka Rask, and there's Corey Crawford in your picture. Corey faced a total of 54 Boston Bruins shots, stopping 51 of them. Tuukka Rask, 63 shots, stopping 59 of them. You know my math is bad, but Corey Crawford so exhausted after the game was over that, he could barely sit up to do the interviews. And, of course, at this time of year, they're surrounded by the media. But just unreal, the amount of duress that the bodies go under through a situation like this. And then it makes you wonder, in the day following that, having to get the fluids back into their bodies. It's more than just drinking water. Some guys have to take the fluids intravenously.
I go back to when Murray Bannerman was our goaltender. The goaltenders probably lose more weight than anybody. Back in the old day, the goaltenders' equipment absorbed a lot more water than the modern-day equipment for the goaltenders, but they're the guys that are in there the whole time. They lose so much water in the body during the bulk of a hockey game that it's incredible. Murray Bannerman used to seize up all the time, and they used to have to put IVs in him during intermissions. I didn't hear that anybody had to do that, but that's not really uncommon. For the goaltenders, their water loss during a game is incredible, and for them it's so important to really make sure that they hydrate during the game. They have the water bottles on top of the net. that they use as frequently as possible. And for those goaltenders, as hard as anybody on what has to happen as far as recovery in the few days between the games.
Our good friend Chris Bowden from Comcast Sportsnet has Andrew Shaw standing by. Let's go to Chris right now.
Thanks very much, John. And Andrew, has the phone been recharged? Are all the messages out of there? And is it kind of symbolic of putting game number 1 aside and you got game 2 business to take care of here?
Yeah, obviously it was a busy, 2 days, but, put that behind us. And, we got to get ready for game 2 here and, kept mentally prepared for it.
How are you doing physically in terms of the recovery from that? Does it feel back to normal now after, I think you logged about 25 minutes of ice time the other night?
Yeah, it feels great, actually. The 2 days helped us a lot, and, it helped Boston as well. So, tonight's going to be another battle.
It was almost like a feeling out process. Took 2 games with the length of that game. All the secrets kind of revealed here in terms of what you expected and the kind of things that they do and what they do well?
Yeah, they're a great team. They're great in all aspects of their game, and, we knew that coming into the game, but, we got a little extra look at it with those 3 extra periods.
Now, do you have to almost treat this game as maybe not necessarily that you lost that game, but have the same sense of desperation because you want to come home or want to go over to Boston with a 2-0 lead rather than 1-1 there?
Yeah, it'd be perfect. Like I said, they're a great team. They're going to come out harder than they did the first game, and they're fantastic at that game. And we got to better ourselves in all aspects and be prepared for them tonight.
All right, thanks for taking the time to do this. Have fun tonight. I know you will.
Thanks for having me.
All right, that's Andrew Shaw. John, I'll send it back to you.
All right, thanks, Chris. They pre-taped that interview, by the way. Shawzy didn't just go down there and throw his hockey gear off and do a quick interview with Chris Bowden, but the magic of television. And I want to stay on something that they talked about, Troy. Andrew Shaw talked about this upcoming game and how he, along with the Blackhawks, all expect the Boston Bruins to really come at them. That's just a given because the Bruins don't want to go down 2-0 in this series and have to go back on home ice, and they're going to get 3 of the next 5 games on home ice, but they don't want to be in a position to where they have to win 4 out of 5 in order to win the series. They want to try and steal a game here.
Well, absolutely, and if you look at maybe the bonus for the Blackhawks, they were the team that won the first game, and that's important because they have to hold service here on home ice. And for the Boston Bruins, if they win that first game, they automatically steal an opportunity to win the series on their home ice. So the Blackhawks know that. They know that the Boston Bruins are going to come out with a better response. I thought the Boston Bruins were really good. I thought their first line was really effective in that game, and they're going to come out with as good as or better effort, and the Blackhawks know that, they won the game, but easily could have gone in favor of the Boston Bruins, so they have to come out and match a different level of intensity that is expected from the Boston Bruins, if that's possible, because, man, I'll tell you what, the pace of that first hockey game, especially in regulation, was absolutely incredible.
The great unknown for tonight's game, and I'm going to touch on this with Bruins radio color analyst Bob Beers when he comes on and joins us here, but the big question for tonight's game is Nathan Horton going to play in game number 2? We were here yesterday, and he took the practice with the Bruins, and his body seemed to be moving fairly liberally, but you just never know around game time if the guy is going to be totally there. Bruin head coach Claude Julien did not play his hand. He said we'll see around game time, so you wonder if Horton can't play, what the Bruins lines are going to look like. Still a good hockey team, but they'll be a little bit different.
Yeah, I'll let Bob get more in depth on that, but obviously losing Gregory Campbell already to a broken leg in the previous series against the Pittsburgh Penguins, that leaves a big hole in their depth. I mean, you look at some of the top players that play big, important roles for teams in different areas. Gregory Campbell, one of those role players that had 3 goals in the postseason, was one of their top penalty killers. So it leaves a big void there. And if they lose another guy like Nathan Horton, who's on their top line and is having a tremendous postseason, somebody's going to have to step up. You don't know who it's going to be, but for both teams, they know that right now is the time, and if you're able to play, you will be playing.
One of the guys I wanted to point out, Troy, Johnny Oduya, the other night, there he is on your screen. Johnny Oduya made 2 huge plays in overtime. The one on Sean Thornton by forcing him to go wide of the net on a 2-on-1, and then the play that he made on Kaspars Daugavins. I said at the time that Daugavins mishandled the puck. Then I looked at the replay, and I saw that Oduya got his stick in there at the last second.
At real time during the game, you couldn't see what Johnny Oduya did, but he said after the game, all I tried to do was just reach back and try and disrupt anything that I could, and it looked like just his tip of the stick disrupted the puck enough to flip it up and make Doggerman's hesitate on his move that he wanted to make. It was a great effort by Johnny Oduya. I mean, you've seen so many guys do so many little things that overall you kind of really can't see in the big picture of the game. But the effort from Johnny Oduya has been great. He added the big goal, the game-tying goal in the third period. He's got 3 goals in the postseason. He's been fabulous all season long for the Blackhawks.
Yeah, Michael Roosevelt as well, stepping up big, and I know that the defense has to continue to do that. And this time of year, you touch wood, you knock the side of your head, whatever your superstition is. You hope that everybody remains healthy, and the Blackhawks defense has really stepped up and done the job here in the playoffs. Well, we're going to step out and take a break, and when we return, we're going to have the radio color commentator of the Boston Bruins. He's a former Boston Bruin and a great guy. Bob Beers will join us, and as Morning Skate Live will continue, you see the guys going through their paces down here on United Center ice. It's raining outside, but it's crystal clear here inside the United Center. All before game number 2 of the Stanley Cup Finals, the Blackhawks and the Boston Bruins. Should be a lot of fun, so we would just ask you to stick around. And hey, if you're already finished with that extra cup of coffee, go get another one while we take a break. And continue watching our show here today, Morning Skate Live. We'll be back in just a moment. And we're back here to the United Center. John Weideman joined by Bob Beers, the fine radio color commentator of the Boston Bruins on the Hub. And you don't see a picture of Bobby there, but trust me, he's a good-looking man. He's with me here right now. Bobby, we really appreciate you joining us. And let's talk about game number 2 here tonight, the Blackhawks and the Boston Bruins. Troy was talking about it. It was anybody's game in game number 1. It went the way of the Blackhawks. Very easily, the Bruins could have won that game in the first overtime with all those chances.
You know, the first period was fairly even. I thought the second and third periods of regulation, you know, Chicago really had a number of opportunities, and that's when they were at their best in that game. And then through the overtimes, you know, you can make a case that the Bruins probably had the better of the chances there. But yeah, Chicago comes out on top. They find a way to win, go to the net hard, be physical, and pretty simple hockey when you really look at it. And that goal that was scored, and a guy that had a good game, a couple guys that had good games, especially with Bolin and Shaw, and they get rewarded for it.
We want to acknowledge our viewers on Comcast Sportsnet and through ChicagoBlackhawks.com and through the phone apps. Guys, thanks one and all for watching here this morning. And a very interesting time of year. I know this is what we work for, right? Obviously, you know, you start the season, you get the preseason, you go through all of that, you go through the regular season. You got this year it was a 48-game slate, but normally it's an 82-game slate, and you work your way through that. And you know, as a broadcaster, your job is to talk about your team and talk about the National Hockey League. And we all live for this time of year, and both cities have really gotten into this. I know here in Chicago, I'm seeing Blackhawks colors all over the place. What's it like in Boston?
Well, similar. I mean, they've really kind of rallied around this team, and especially some of the stuff that went on late in the season that affected some of their schedule with the marathon bombings and everything else. They've kind of rallied around the team. The team has reached out to a lot of the victims. It affected everybody, and it's been kind of a diversion, I guess, with all that had gone on. That the Bruins have had a nice run here in the playoffs and played so well. It didn't look that way in the first round when they were against Toronto, and they had the 3-1 lead, and then they were losing 4-1 with about 10 minutes to go before they were able to come back with a great comeback and win it, and have rolled ever since. But these two cities, I think this is the way it should be. You know, you look at it, original 6, never met in the finals, 2 proud organizations and cities, and cities that really back their team. So I won't lie to you, I was pretty happy to see a couple of days in between games here in Chicago. It didn't disappoint me at all.
Imagine that with all the bars and restaurants in this town. Oh, well. Well, I wanted to get to the injury report here, Bob. We're going to flash it up on the screen. And the Blackhawks have been very, very fortunate because, you know, this time of year, I mean, you played. You know what it's like. This time of year, you've got so many bumps and bruises. Sometimes you're playing with broken bones, strains, sprains, pulls, ligament tears, whatever it might be. But, you know, it's the Cup Finals, and all of that is just almost ignored this time of year. Unfortunately for the Bruins, Gregory Campbell with that broken leg from the series against the Pittsburgh Penguins really paid the price to help his hockey team. And then Nathan Horton goes out in game number 1 in the first overtime on what looked like kind of a benign play. He and Nicholas Hjalmarsson were just shoving each other, and you saw Horton go down with what we're going to call an upper body injury. You wonder what would happen with the lines. If Horton is not able to play here tonight, what Claude Julien, the head coach of the Bruins, will do with his lines?
If Horton is unable to play, I mean, I would imagine, I'd be surprised if it wasn't Tyler Seguin up on that right wing. He played there in Horton's absence in the overtimes and generated a couple good scoring chances for himself and for the team. For him, it's a matter of finishing now, which is something that they're all looking for in Boston. They're looking for him to be able to do, especially if he gets that elevated ice time. But I kind of expect Horton to play here in this game. I'd be surprised if he didn't. It was reported the last couple of days, and it makes a lot of sense. It is speculation that it's a shoulder separation. I think it keeps popping out on him. It happened late in the season, initially against the Pittsburgh Penguins, and he's had to deal with it here throughout the playoffs. So I would be surprised if he doesn't play, but I would think that that's the way it would look on the top couple of lines anyhow, with Seguin moving up there.
I want to go to your defense quickly for a moment or two if I can. You've seen Zdeno Chara, the Bruins' great captain. You've seen him all season long for the past couple of seasons. You saw him with the team when they won the Stanley Cup in 2011 against the Vancouver Canucks. You know how hard his shot is. You know how big he is. For you guys, that's like an everyday occurrence. But Johnny Boychuk, I had an opportunity to talk to him yesterday. He's an Edmonton native. And I asked him about his shot. I said, where did you develop your shot? And he said, well, like a lot of Canadian kids, I either did it in my basement or out of my driveway against my garage door. So I guess if you drive around Canada and you look at the garage doors, you can kind of tell who the families are that had hockey players. But his shot is over 100 miles an hour, and nobody says anything about it.
He can pound it. I mean, they know that in Boston, and he does everything kind of hard. If it's icing the puck, he takes a slap shot. If he's got the puck at the point, he's taking a slap shot more often than not. And he can really bring it. And he lined up a couple of times for those one-timers off of face-off wins in overtime. And fortunately, for Crawford, he was able to see those shots coming in, which is a big factor. Most goalies will stop those shots from the point if they see it coming in, but you get some traffic in there that makes them more dangerous. And he had some success against earlier here in the playoffs against a couple of different goaltenders. And he's a guy that he's not real pretty at his work, but he does everything. Like I said, he does everything hard, and he's willing to take a hit to make a play.
Yeah.
And he competes and he blocks shots, and he's one of those guys that you just love to have on your team.
56 hits, 56 blocks in the playoffs, and has that kind of a shot, and he plays that regularly, and he's really that steady on your blue line. Kind of flies under the radar because of guys like Chara.
He's one of the top 4 defensemen, and that's they use him as such. You've got him and Ferentz that play together, and they have to face the other team's tough lines. If you've got Chara and Seidberg taking on one line, it's going to leave Boychuk and Ferentz to be able to take another one, and that's a big part of their game. And I think all their defensemen are willing to kind of take hits to make plays, and that's a big way that they play. Going back to get pucks, knowing that they're under heavy forecheck, knowing that they're going to get hit, but you have to take that hit in order to make the right play, and that's something that they really pride themselves on as a unit.
All right, Bobby, we got about a minute and a half before we have to take our next break. I want to go to faceoffs because the Bruins are the best faceoff team in the playoffs. Patrice Bergeron seemingly unbeatable in the faceoff dot, but Michael Hanzus was able to best him a couple of times. But you have strength at the center ice position as far as the faceoffs are concerned. Bergeron I talked about. Rich Peverly is very good, and you got a couple of others. But talk about how the Bruins have been able to, if you can, control play and dictate the play because of their faceoff success.
They really work on it at practice. They've worked on it here for a while, and getting puck possession off of faceoffs is something that they pay a lot of attention to. They lose something without having Gregory Campbell in the lineup. He's a left-hand centerman. Their other left-hand centerman is Chris Kelly. So depending on where the faceoff is inside the defensive zone, more often than not, they want to have that left centerman out there or a right-hand shot out there. And without Campbell in the lineup, it really kind of alters the way that they go about it. So Bergeron takes the majority of the big faceoffs, and he is the best at it. I think he's got the best percentage in the league, I believe. So very good at it. And it's funny, if he loses some in one game, he usually comes back strong the next game. Whether he figures something out about the other guy, he's a pretty smart player that way, and he really works at it.
Well, Bob, we really appreciate you being on with us. I wish we had another 10 minutes to talk because we could fill that easily, but really appreciate you coming on as well.
I appreciate it. Looking forward to another great game here tonight, I hope. I mean, if Game 1 was any indication,
I was just going to say, if Game 1, where it went to 3 overtimes, is any indication of what we have, we all better bring a late-night snack because this is going to go a while.
Looking forward to it. Thanks very much for having me.
Thank you very much, Bob. That's Bob Beers, radio color analyst of the Boston Bruins on the Hub. Stick around. Plenty more coming. You're watching Morning Skate Live, presented by Athletico Physical Therapy.
First, congratulations on the win. How does it feel to be a Selke winner?
It feels pretty amazing. I don't think it matters what category you're in. To be nominated for an award along with guys like Pavel Datsyuk and Patrice Bergeron, I think is a pretty amazing thing. I think you really have a lot of respect for those two guys and the way they play the game. But for the most part, I don't think I would have the chance to be here if it wasn't for the team that I'm with right now, and all these guys in this locker room going out there making me look good on the ice. And I think that helps me every day. So definitely an honor to accept that award, though.
Well, we saved the best for last. Blackhawks captain Jonathan Toews, there you see him in your picture. You saw him in that interview. The Frank Selke Trophy winner. And if anybody can identify with what that means, it's the guy sitting to my right, Troy Murray, who won the Frank Selke Trophy, I think it was 1986, if I'm not mistaken. Correct. 86. And Troy, Jonathan Toews, Blackhawks captain, so far in the playoffs, he really hasn't hit the score sheet that many times, but he's done so many other things to help this team, get to where it is at this point of the season. And the so many other things part is really what the league looks at, isn't it, when they consider who to award the Selke Trophy to?
Well, it's the best defensive forward in the National Hockey League, and Jonathan Toews, he excels at all areas of the ice. He's great offensively, obviously. You'd like to have a little bit more production here in the postseason, but he's played up against the other team's top line and done an excellent job in shutting those players down and not letting them be the difference in a series or in a game. Jonathan Toews is great in penalty kill, does the power play. Defensively, Joe Quenneville loves to have a guy like Jonathan Toews in a lineup to throw him in, to take the key faceoffs inside a zone in the last minute of a hockey game. Jonathan Toews is the guy you rely on, and I think it's a well-deserved honor for Jonathan Toews. The former winner, the guy who won it last year, Patrice Bergeron, is in the lineup for the Boston Bruins. Two excellent all-around players, Bergeron and Jonathan Toews. Jonathan Toews, though, very well-deserved honor, and congratulations to him. Good guy inside the locker room, and then being recognized as one of the best all-around players in the game.
Hear, hear. That's great to see. Jonathan Toews, who was smugged, or let's say not disparaged, but let's say shortchanged for the Selke Award a couple of other times, and now has won.
Well, everybody's, I mean, there's always great. It was Datsuk and Patrice Bergeron were also the nominees this year. Datsuk has won it before. Bergeron won it last year. Kessler, when he won it a couple of years ago, did an excellent job.
All right, let's head down to the bench. Chris Bowden has head coach Joel Quenneville as his guest.
All right, John and Troy, thanks very much. How much does a coach and a coaching staff allow themselves to enjoy the end of that game the other night before you start moving on to game two?
Well, we had some. We enjoyed it for a while there. It was what a game. I mean, that was as good as you're going to find in the playoffs and the finals and a triple overtime game. Guys left it out on the rink there, and the next day, though, I certainly bounced off of that how I felt the day before.
We all know what Jonathan Toews' line, Michael Hanzus' line can do, but based on what you saw at the end of the game, we know the situation's fluid from period to period. How excited are you about the potential Boland, Bickell, and Shaw can do for this series?
Well, I think they bring you energy. They're competitive guys. They're positionally strong, defensively aware. Offensively, got some talent there as well. So they can bring it to both sides of the puck, which we like. And they can bring some energy and physicality as well.
What did you love about what you did in game one that you want to bring here into game two? And where do you need to get better?
Well, I thought some areas, they're a dangerous team. I think we saw firsthand what they're capable of. And they got a top line that's going to, give us something to think about as we go along here. But I just thought we did some good things, but they hang on to the puck. They're patient, and they got some speed. They're probably quicker than we anticipated, and so it's going to make for a very exciting series, and we got to be at our best.
Joel, thanks once again for doing this. Good luck tonight.
All right, you betcha. Thank you.
All right, that's Joel Quenneville, head coach of your Chicago Blackhawks. John, Troy, back to you.
All right, Chris, thank you very much. And without further ado, let's get to the Twitter questions. We have a couple here for you, Troy. I'll flash them up on the screen in just a moment. And there you see, with 3 overtime periods, the players have to stay hydrated and get food in between periods. What do they eat and drink?
Well, I had a good conversation with the strength and conditioning coach, Paul Goodman, after game one, and I looked at some of the things that I used to do as a player in those situations. Obviously, you want to rehydrate the fluids that you're losing in the game. You get it some mixes that include vitamin B. Energy bars is what the players drink, or players eat during the intermissions. Just anything that they can do to keep their energy up where it needs to be. It's almost impossible to be at the position you were at the beginning of the game, but to lose as few and as less calories during the game and the least amount of fluids that you can do is what the goal is for both of these teams.
All right, let's go to our next Twitter question, Troy. After playing almost a complete doubleheader shorter game, don't you think this game's pace will slow down by mid-second period?
Well,
good question.
It's a good question, but the one thing is you did have an opportunity to have 2 days in between Game 1 and Game 2, which is a little bit of a unique situation in the postseason, but I think both of these teams will benefit from that extra day. Both teams did not skate on Thursday after the Game 1. They had a good practice yesterday. They should be back, and they should have the nutrition that they're looking to do. And, they've been able to rehydrate. So I don't think it's going to be that much of an effect. If it was last night that they were playing it, I definitely think it would have come into effect. But I think both of these teams are well conditioned. They have great coaching staffs as far as what they need to do. They have strength and conditioning coach. They have nutritionists that take care of business. So I don't think it's going to be that much of a concern. If it gets into overtime, obviously, you might have a little bit of a different situation.
All right, let's get to the keys for tonight's game, Troy. What are they in your mind?
Again, I think it. You look at what happened and what was successful for both of these teams in Game 1. The speed and the tempo, the pace for the Blackhawks, especially in regulation, I thought created a lot of opportunities for them to score. And for the Boston Bruins, they want to play that big, physical, controlling style of game. You saw, that top line of Nathan Horton, David Krejci, and Milan Lucic be so effective when they got the pucks and made nice little plays. These are two very skilled teams. You have to limit your mistakes. Puck management in this game is going to be critical because you have players on both sides that if you make one little mistake, it can make the difference in the hockey game, and that's what you need to do. You have to limit your mistakes. And then again, obviously the goaltending. What a matchup. I mean, both goaltenders did everything that they could to keep pucks out of the net. You look at the shots in the game, it was incredible. The scoring opportunities. Goaltending is going to be critical in this game as well.
Troy, give me about a 20-second answer. The Blackhawks power play 0 for 3 in game number 1, including a 5-on-3 advantage. How can they improve?
Well, they've got to move the puck around. I mean, everybody has an opportunity with their videotapes and stuff to see the tendencies of what's going on. Joel Quenneville, it looks like in Game 2 is going to switch up some of the combinations on one unit. Toews, Hossa, and Shaw with Keith and Seabrook on the point. Kane, Bolin, Saad, Nick Leddy, and Patrick Sharp on the point there. So they just have to have good puck movement, move your feet, move the puck, create opportunities, shoot the puck at the net.
Well done as usual, Bud. We'll do it again next time. Game 5 if we have it.
Look forward to it.
All right, that's been Morning Skate Live. The Blackhawks and the Bruins Game 2 coming up tonight. Let's hope it's 2-0. Go Hawks!